what are the Florida Panthers doing? When I saw this trade for Matthew Tkachuk, I was shocked. Now, they traded their best offensive player from last year, Jonathan Huberdeau. He is 29 years old. Whatever. He's still fairly young. He's still in the prime of his career, and he's still a very good player. And then adding to that trade, which made no sense, by the way, either their second or top defenseman in Mackenzie Weegar and one of their top prospects in Cole Schwartz. What is it? Schwidit, which made no sense. What are your thoughts? And they gave up a 2025 first-round draft pick for Matthew Tkachuk. What were your thoughts to this crazy trade? As good as Matthew Tkachuk had of a year, he's 24 years old. He's fantastic. I met the kid. He has a very good personality, but kind of a little cocky, like his brother, and his father, who is a very cocky SOB as well. I met a couple of times as well. I'm not a big fan of Keith Tkachuk either. But what are your thoughts to this trade? What were the Florida Panthers thinking when they did this?
Okay, just for clarification purposes, I don't write for the Panthers. I cover the Panthers for NHL.com.
Okay, so NHL.com, yes.
Okay, and there was kind of a leading question. I'm going to say objection to the leading question because you obviously didn't like the trade. Well, guess what? I really like the trade from the Panthers standpoint, and I will tell you why. Because you mentioned Jonathan Huberdeau being one of the best offensive players in the NHL, without question. In the regular season, his game, as much as I like him, and he's from a town maybe 20 minutes from where I grew up. Fellow French Canadian like me, so we have a bond. Like we speak French in the locker room. I like the guy, classy dude, and all that. His game doesn't translate in the playoffs. It just does not. You saw him; he had 5 points in 10 playoff games. Completely ineffective against Tampa Bay, and it's nothing against him. His game is pure finesse, where he needs time and space to work his magic. And the guy's a phenomenal passer. Great stick handler, has the ability to hang on to the puck for quite a while. Well, guess what? In the playoffs, guys are on you in a second. No time and space. The game is way more physical. He's just not a great playoff performer because of his style. Now, you mentioned Mackenzie Weegar as the second best Panther defenseman. Again, he's another guy who's undersized, not necessarily made for the playoffs. He gets pushed around. He's a tough kid. I will give him that. I mean, he's a bulldog, but he's small. He gets pushed around in the playoffs, in front of the net, on the boards. He also has a habit of turning the puck over. Now, having said that, he's great in the regular season. Good two-way guy, but it was problematic in the playoffs. I mean, the Panthers, if we're going to be honest, we're lucky to beat Washington in the first round this year for their first playoff series win since '96. And if Tom Wilson doesn't get hurt in the opener of that series and doesn't play again, I think the Panthers would have had problems. So the Panthers, as they were constituted, even though they had the best team in the regular season, to me were deficient. And I said this before the playoffs started, that I was concerned that was not a team that was built for a long run. So you combine that, and then Tkachuk. You want to talk a guy prototypically built for the playoffs? That's Matthew Tkachuk.
Is he really? 27 games, 7 goals, 8 assists, -11, and he hasn't really approached his game in the playoffs. And a Calgary Flames team that was one of the best offensive teams in the league, completely got bombed by the Edmonton Oilers, a team that shouldn't have knocked them off. They had terrible goaltending. He did not show up in that series. I'm sorry, he did not. And to say that Matthew Tkachuk, out of 5 players, and I disagree with you on this, as much as I love you, man, but I'm looking.
You don't love me.
I do love you. I'm sitting here looking at this trade. You gave up a top prospect, you gave up a first-round draft pick, you gave up your second probably best defenseman, and you gave up a good offensive player for a guy like Matthew Tkachuk, who, by the way, as much as everybody thinks he's such a great playoff player, he has not shown up there. And really, as a personality, he's going to Florida now. He is going to have the pressure on him to show up to games and be a leader, something he was not in Calgary. So to sit here and say giving up 5 players for 1 and saying that this was a great trade for the Florida Panthers. And by the way, I actually grew up a Florida Panther fan because of John Van Beesbrook. Okay, so I actually still root them on. I wanted to see them when they got their butts whipped by a Tampa Bay Lightning team that honestly it shouldn't have even been close the way the Florida Panthers played throughout the season. And they added Goudreau, was it Claude Giroux?
Claude Giroux, yeah.
Claude Giroux, which they lost in free agency to Ottawa. So it doesn't make any sense. I don't like this trade. This sets this team back. I bet you they don't even make the playoffs next year.
Okay, can I add something else, because I wasn't quite done with.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Okay. And I don't know if I called it a great trade. I said I like the trade. A couple of other factors. It's 4 players. Number one. Number two. You overestimate. Cole Schwinn's a good prospect. He's not one of the Panthers' top prospects. That's just flat out not true. Sorry. And the other issue is finances. Weegar was heading into his last season of his contract. Huberdeau was getting into the final season of his contract. It was going to take a whole lot of money, and the Panthers were like in cap hell. So they got a guy, and we want to quibble about Tkachuk. First of all, Tkachuk was 24 years old, and Tkachuk, unless I'm severely mistaken, had more points in the playoffs than Huberdeau did. And you're not going to argue with me that Tkachuk
played in more games. He played in more games than Huberdeau did.
6 and 4. Okay, per game it was still higher, and you're not going to tell me. The thing is, if Huberdeau's not scoring, he doesn't necessarily bring a whole lot, whereas Tkachuk brings a physical presence. Okay, as a playoff player, to me it's black and white that Tkachuk is more ideal as a playoff player. Okay, and then now you're dealing with the fact that you had 2 guys who you're going to have to give major contracts to when you're in cap hell, and then you got, let's say, the 2 key players in that trade. You went from a 29-year-old to a 24-year-old. So I like it from all those standpoints. The Panthers were in a tough spot with their cap, with those guys. To me, the worst, the most disappointing move of the offseason for the Panthers wasn't that trade. In the remotest was not being able to re-sign Mason Marchment, who is one of the few Panther players who is what I call a prototypical playoff guy. They have too many finesse players, and they needed to toughen that team up to be able to take a longer run. And I'm with you. They will not be anywhere near as good in the regular season without Huberdeau and Weegar. I agree with you. And in the Eastern Conference, with the improvements made by some other teams, yeah, they might struggle to make the playoffs. But if they do get in the playoffs, I think they'll be a lot better equipped to make a run than they were even this past season.
So you mentioned it from the player style, but also from the coaching style too. They move on from their interim coach and Andrew Burnett, who they won the President's Trophy with, and bring in Paul Maurice. Is that your thinking maybe of why they brought him into? Because Paul Maurice with Winnipeg always brought a physical style. They were one of the more physical teams in the league. You think that's the reason why they made that coaching move, to try to get more playoff prepared for the Florida Panthers?
I don't know why they make the move, and I have no problem with Paul Maurice. He's a good coach. He's been around a while. He's got a great reputation, but from where I sit, Andrew Burnett got a raw deal. If I'm sitting from the position of the Panthers were not well constituted to make a playoff run based on their roster, well, that doesn't fall on Andrew Burnett. They were well constituted to have a really good regular season while they had the best record in the league. So can we not agree that Burnett maximized their ability in the regular season? And in the playoffs, well, they were shortcomings on their roster, and the coaching alone wasn't able to overcome it. And I'm not sure if Paul Maurice would have won the series against Tampa Bay with the roster they had. So, yeah, I don't know. Like I said, I think Burnett got a raw deal out of this one.
We are talking to Sports Illustrated All Dolphins publisher Alain Poupart. Last question for me about the Florida Panthers. You look at this organization, who a lot of people, they were all in last year at the trade deadline. They made the moves that they needed to. It didn't work out for them. Then this offseason, they made that Tkachuk move. You look at this team right now. Are they more equipped for the future for what they were this year, or did they set themselves back a couple of years after this trade deadline and this offseason?
I mean, they lost first-round picks, but again, they had a team that they figured had a shot, and Giroux if we talk about guys who are built for the playoffs, is more built for the playoffs than Huberdeau, for example. They also got Ben Sherratt, big defenseman who was one of their few physical defensemen in the playoffs. It completely sucks that they got both of them ended up being rentals. They kind of knew that when they made those trades. And then they lost Marchment. But I think they got, to me, and again, you don't agree, but I see Tkachuk as a major foundational piece.
I hope so for their sake.
Well, to a team that can make a run. And another thing also, I'm a massive, massive fan of Barkov, who I think is one of the maybe top 5 two-way players in the NHL. But at some point, he's going to have to take charge of a playoff series. Because to me, it seems like his ability dictates that he should. And I'm thinking of like John Tavares, for example, against the Panthers in 2016, almost single-handedly won that series. And I think Barkov has that kind of ability. And the dude's still only 26, 27, even though it feels like he's been playing for 15 years. But he needs to take that step level. So to answer your question, I think they're about in the same spot in terms of long range and their capabilities, even though they'll probably take a step back in the regular season.
We really appreciate you joining us. I know you're a very busy guy, and obviously OTAs have started. You're going to see guys playing in pads now.
Training camp, not OTAs, training camp.
I'm sorry, training camp. But I always call that OTAs. That's what I call it. But they're getting ready for preseason. Preseason's what? 3 weeks away? I mean, 2 weeks.
I think it's next week. Some teams start next week. Yeah.
Is it? Is it really a week away? Wow.
Actually, there's a game.
It's crazy.
Yeah, the Hall of Fame game. Yeah.
The Hall of Fame game I heard, but I didn't know the games are starting that quick. I thought it was like 2-3 weeks away. But that just shows you it's crazy, man. Football starts in September. It's crazy. It really is. But thank you for joining us. Tell the fans how they can find you on social media, bud.
I don't know if you may have had my Twitter handle down there. It's Poupart, my last name, P as in Peter, O-U. P as in Peter again, A-R-T, as you see the name scrolling down there, NFL. That's my Twitter handle, at Poupart NFL.
Well, we'll definitely get you on again. I definitely want to get into more conversations about the Dolphins and your thoughts of the Dolphins before the season starts. So I'll have Speedy get you on before the season starts, and we'll go over your thoughts in the division and where the Dolphins could be this year. But thank you for giving us the time, my friend.
You got it.